Hello again. In a previous presentation, I spoke with you about landscape practices to attract wildlife to one's yard. Now I'm going to talk to you about landscape practices to reduce nuisance wildlife. The reduction in natural areas through development has caused an increase in reliance of wildlife upon residential areas, and landscapes can offer all of the elements that wildlife needs to survive. In order to discourage nuisance wildlife, it's important to determine why animals are attracted to a landscape so that element can be removed or replaced as needed. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss a 4-step process for managing nuisance wildlife. Step 1 is often overlooked. Time spent determining exactly which species of wildlife is causing your problem is time well spent. You can accomplish this by inspecting the damage and looking for other signs left by the animal, and by determining what time of day the damage is occurring. Once you know which animal is causing the problem, you can move forward in determining why it's visiting your yard and the best methods for removing it from your yard. Let's take a look at some common evidence of Florida wildlife. Freshwater turtles such as the peninsular cooters, Florida softshell, yellow-bellied slider, red-bellied slider are commonly seen laying eggs on land. The most damage in a yard or garden may be the nesting hole and then the emergence of baby turtles leaving the nest. FWC rules prohibit taking or possessing turtles from the wild that are on Florida's imperiled species list. These turtles are listed as imperiled: the alligator snapping turtle, Barber's map turtles, Swanee cooters. Also prohibited is taking species that look similar to the imperiled species, which include common snapping turtles and cooters. Can you guess which animals are responsible for digging these burrows? The round hole at the top left is an armadillo, while the half moon on the bottom is made by a gopher tortoise, which is a protected species. Armadillos have rounded or football-shaped shells, whereas gopher tortoises have domed or half-moon-shaped shells. The shape of the hole matches the shape of the animal. Note that armadillos are considered an invasive species in Florida, and you are allowed to fill in an armadillo burrow. Gopher tortoises are listed as threatened species in Florida, and it is unlawful to disturb a gopher tortoise or their burrow in any way. Here are some other signs of the same two species we just looked at. On the top left, you can see the scaly imprint of the bottom of the gopher tortoise's feet. On the right-hand side, the rambling feet of the armadillo. These tracks were made by two common landscape pests. Can you tell who left what track? On the left-hand side, you can see the evenly spaced toes on both the forelimb and hind limb of the raccoon. On the right-hand side, the opossum has evenly spaced front toes, but on its hind limb has an opposable thumb. Here are some other examples of how nuisance wildlife can affect the landscape. Can you tell who chewed these two saplings? On the left-hand side, you see a very precise scissor-like cut through the sapling at an angle, which is indicative of rabbit's teeth, which are very sharp. You may also see droppings somewhere around the base of the sapling or elsewhere in the yard that are perfectly round, also indicative of rabbit. On the right-hand side, this branch is chewed through coarsely and has rough edges. This is indicative of deer. You may also look around and find droppings. As opposed to the rabbit's round droppings, the deer droppings will be oval in shape, but similarly sized overall. Pocket gophers are chestnut-colored rodents with small ears and eyes, and are only 10 to 12 inches long. They can chew and dig their way through compacted soil and roots with the help of large incisor teeth and long curved claws on enlarged forelimbs. They live in deep sandy soils in open longleaf pine and turkey oak sandhill habitats, also in coastal strand, sand pine scrub, and upland hammocks. Most common problems associated with gophers are the numerous large sandy mounds they leave on the surface. Their tunnel systems may extend for 500 feet or more, although most of them are around 145 feet. Shallow tunnels generally run parallel to the surface, 2 inches to 2 feet below the surface. These provide access to their diet of roots and tubers, while nest and food storage tunnels are typically deeper underground. The tunneling activity is beneficial as it brings surface nutrients leached from the soils. Loose soils also provide germination sites for many native plant seeds and provide homes to other animals such as mole skinks. Pocket gophers feed on the taproots, crown roots, fleshy rhizomes, bulbs, and tubers of a wide variety of plants in its natural environment. Bahia grass tubers are preferred, but they will also eat sweet potatoes, peanuts, sugarcane, alfalfa, and peas. Moles belong to the mammalian order Insectivora, meaning insect eaters. Moles have large, powerful front feet designed for pushing soil out of the way. The eastern mole on the right is most common in Florida. It has a body length of about 5.5 to 6 inches, plus a sparsely haired tail of another 1 to 1.5 inches. Its fur is very soft and points straight up, which helps it to move forward and backward within its tunnel. The fur of both moles is slate gray in color. Star-nosed moles, as seen on the left, can be found in extreme North Florida. They have numerous fleshy finger-like projections around the tip of their nose. Moles are typically found in wet soils. Excess watering causes insects in the soil to move to the surface, which then attracts the moles, who will dig their tunnels near the surface to consume the insects. Natural predators of moles are snakes, hawks, owls, skunks, coyotes, foxes, and even sandhill cranes. The eastern gray squirrel is known as a tree squirrel. It has predominantly gray fur, but it can have a brownish color, and it has usually a white underside. They have large bushy tails. They range in size from 9 to 11 inches for the body, in the tail from 7 to 9 inches. Eastern gray squirrels are crepuscular, or more active during the early and late hours of the day, and tend to avoid the heat in the middle of a summer day. They eat fruits, nuts, berries, seedlings, bark, and newly planted bulbs. Fox squirrels, also known as eastern fox squirrels or Sherman's fox squirrels, can exhibit color variations which range from buff to gray, and in some instances black. They are diurnal and active primarily during the day. Their diet includes acorns, hickory nuts, tree buds, insects, tubers, bulbs, roots, bird eggs, seeds of pines, spring fruiting trees, and fungi. Agricultural crops such as corn, soybeans, oats, wheat, and fruit are also eaten on occasion. Fox squirrels are much larger than gray squirrels, having a body length of up to 27 inches and an additional tail length of up to 13 inches. Whereas gray squirrels weigh generally right around a pound, fox squirrels can weigh over 2 pounds. Squirrels can cause problems by chewing on plants, tree bark, and ornamentals, as well as plastic items like electrical wiring insulation or even wood siding on houses and outbuildings. It is often impossible or impractical to eliminate the source of their chewing. Taste repellents are designed to stop chewing, and they seem to work in direct proportion to the animal's desire to chew on the object. Taste repellents will not work on large areas and are impractical for inaccessible things like tall trees. They also cannot be used on anything that you intend to eat. Rules for fox squirrels are going to vary greatly compared to gray squirrels. Fox squirrels are considered a threatened species and are protected. However, for gray squirrels, a landowner may lawfully live trap or humanely destroy nuisance gray squirrels without a special permit or license. Live captured nuisance gray squirrels must be released or euthanized within 24 hours of capture or trap inspection. In addition, the nuisance squirrels may be transported and released at an off-site location within the county of capture that is a minimum of 40 contiguous acres in size if the animal is a native species and the releaser has written permission from the owner of the released site. Transportation of the wildlife cannot violate any rabies alert or area quarantine issued by a county health department or county animal services. Roof rats can cause similar chewing damage to squirrels. It'll just occur at different times of the day. Roof rats are nocturnal. They are an introduced species from southern Asia. Their adult size can be 12 to 14 inches in length for the body, plus the length of their tail. The tail is typically longer than the head and body length. Their tails are hairless, scaly, and black. Their body is sleek with prominent ears and eyes. 3 color phases are commonly seen in Florida: a black back with a slate gray belly, a gray back with a lighter gray belly, and a brownish gray back with a white or cream belly. Other signs of roof rats, in addition to chewing, may be black banana-shaped droppings, a quarter to a half-inch long, and dark smears or rub marks along the rat's travel route. Now that we're off to a good start in identifying what our nuisance wildlife is, we can move to step 2 in the 4-step process. Step 2 is determining what makes your yard or home appealing to wildlife, and it's going to be one of the 3 resources that animals rely upon: food, water, or cover. Appealing features in your yard that may be attracting nuisance wildlife can include food, such as pet food left outdoors, dropped seed beneath bird feeders, and dropped ripe fruits and nuts beneath fruit and nut trees. Trash may also serve the same purpose as food when attracting wildlife to your yard. If you have outdoor trash cans, use cans that can't be opened by animals, secure your cans so they cannot be knocked over, and be sure to put your cans at the curb in the morning rather than the evening to reduce the chance that wildlife will knock them over and raid them. If you think you're providing too much cover, you can remove brush piles in your landscape and raise wood piles, such as for wood-burning fireplaces, onto a pallet and stack it tightly. You can also mow tall grass and remove shrubs. This will reduce an animal's sense of security. As for watering, overwatering can cause yard pests to come to the surface and attract wildlife such as moles, but also the time of day in which you water can affect your visitation by nuisance wildlife. If you water in the evening, you're more likely to attract nocturnal nuisance visitors such as skunks and armadillos. Keep in mind when selecting landscape plants that some plants are naturally attractive to specific wildlife, such as roses, Indian hawthorn, pansies, hibiscus, and rudbeckia. Review the UF IFAS extension publications on ornamental plant susceptibility to specific animals. Now that we've talked about identifying yard pests and identifying what makes a yard attractive to those pests, we can move to step 3 in our 4-step process. Step 3 is considering your options to encourage animals to leave, whether that be habitat modification, physical or chemical deterrence, or trapping and killing. Habitat modification is the cheapest and most effective long-term solution to reducing nuisance wildlife problems in residential landscapes. When addressing the removal of food, you should note that wildlife forage on a variety of foods, including grasses, flowers, seeds, berries, nuts, fruits, insects, and other animals. In order to reduce the number of animals attracted to your landscape, be sure to remove ripe fruit that is dropped from the fruit trees, which may attract rats and coyotes. To reduce damage from deer, plant deer-resistant plants such as black-eyed Susan and rosemary. You may also consider offering alternative food sources or providing a supplemental food source such as corn, nuts, or seeds to distract animals from feeding on your plants that you consider a higher value. Keep in mind, offering an alternative food source may encourage more animals into the area. To remove cover for wildlife, remove shrubs and mid-story trees. Remove low-growing shrubs and tall grasses to discourage small and medium animals, especially rodents who prefer tall grasses. This in turn will reduce the predators, snakes, and birds of prey who feed on the rodents. Brush piles, stacks of firewood, or even rock piles can provide ideal conditions for a variety of small animals. When considering watering your lawn and garden, keep in mind that soil invertebrates move towards the soil surface of a saturated lawn. This creates space for moles to move in and make new tunnels. Reduce the frequency or intensity of watering to reduce pressure from moles, and avoid watering at night when armadillos and skunks are active. Wildlife deterrence can take on many forms. The first form would be physical barriers, installing fencing or netting between wildlife and whatever your prized plant or landscape is. The second class of deterrence would be frightening devices, something like a fake predator, motion-sensitive sprinklers, strobe lights, flagging tape, or the recording of alarm calls, horns, bells, whistles, or cannons. The third class of deterrence would be chemical repellents, something that produces an offensive odor or taste, or is a fear-inducing scent. Deterrents in general are not recommended. Many that are on the market don't tend to work well, especially the ones that are said to produce vibration or ultrasonic sounds. Your time or money is better spent on other methods. Trapping nuisance wildlife should be considered a last resort. If you decide to set a trap, you will have many decisions to make regarding what to do with the animals you capture. Some traps will kill the animal as they're trapped, whereas others will catch the animal alive. Many state laws govern what can be done with an animal captured alive. A non-native invasive species such as an armadillo or a potential rabies-carrying species such as a raccoon cannot be released alive anywhere in the state of Florida. Most other species can only be released if you have written permission from the landowner where the animal is to be released. It is unlawful to release a wild animal on any public or private land without written permission. When managing deer, sometimes noise deterrents can be effective at keeping deer from eating prized plants. Noises can be simple loud noises or something like a dog barking inside of a home. Chemical repellents that are commercially produced are not always effective against deer in all areas, and some of the chemical compounds can be short-lived. If sport hunting is legal, if you have a large enough property, in many cases, if you have nuisance deer and you can prove that they're being a nuisance and that you have tried other deterrents, you may be able to get a depredation permit to remove the specific offending deer. In general, to manage deer, you want to avoid planting plants that deer find naturally attractive, but really a hungry deer is going to eat just about anything that it has access to. You can try to reduce access to plants by deer by putting in fencing. Remember, effective fencing for deer has to be at least 8 feet tall. And if you can't do anything to get rid of the deer or deter them from munching on your landscape, you may have to just give in and tolerate their presence. There are a variety of options available to a homeowner when it comes to managing moles. You may be able to tolerate the moles as they eat invertebrates and not plants, roots, and tubers. You may attempt to use chemical repellents that are typically castor oil emulsions, or there's a variety of traps that are available from most stores, most hardware stores, and even Walmart. Mole traps are typically lethal traps that include choker loop style traps, harpoon traps, and cinch traps. If you'd like to try to live trap a mole, you can use a pitfall trap, which is simply a hole with some sort of collecting bucket dug along a trail that a mole is using regularly. Once you capture the live mole, you're left with the problem of what to do with the mole. Please keep in mind that the use of any poison to kill moles in the state of Florida requires a permit to poison wildlife from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. These permits are no longer available to homeowners, so you must pay a licensed wildlife removal expert who has one of these permits to deal with your mole problems. Armadillos are one of the fastest spreading and most widespread exotic animals in the United States that is not a bird. There are no effective repellents or toxicants registered for use against armadillos. Exclusion with fences of armadillos can be difficult as they can both dig and climb. Water is also not a deterrent for armadillos. They're quite capable of swimming or walking along the bottom of a body of water for extended distances. The best way to manage armadillos is to reduce the availability of their invertebrate food source, any variety of insects that are using your yard. And of course, as a last resort, there is always the option, as armadillos are considered non-native invasive species, you are permitted to trap and shoot armadillos. Birds peck for many reasons. They peck for food, to excavate sites for nesting, and also for territorial drumming. In the cases of excavation and drumming, these behaviors should be tolerated because they're necessary for the next generation of birds to be produced. In the case that birds are pecking food and crop plants, you can choose to install physical exclusions or barriers such as screens. You may also attempt to use scaring or noise decoys, something like a fake owl or a fake hawk, or a noise decoy, something that plays the sounds of those birds, or even something like an air cannon. Most bird species are protected by law, both state law and federal law, so baiting and killing of most bird species is illegal. Remember, when trying to mitigate the damage created by nuisance wildlife, you have to balance the needs of human activity with the needs of wildlife to benefit both. A solution to damage being caused by wildlife may be that the human needs to change their behavior to reduce the likelihood for conflict. And in some cases, the solution is to change the behavior of the animal. In this presentation, I discussed a 4-step process to manage nuisance wildlife. The first step is often overlooked but shouldn't be. It's an essential step into determining the correct actions to remove nuisance wildlife from your yard. Step 1 is to identify the animal that is creating a nuisance around your home or yard. Step 2 is to assess what makes the yard or home appealing. It's going to be one of the 3 resources that animals require for survival, either food, water, or cover. The third step is to consider options available to convince animals to leave, whether it be habitat modification, physical or chemical deterrence, or physically trapping or killing the animal. Be sure to not leave out the 4th step, which is to monitor and adjust as necessary. Keeping track of your attempts and making note of what worked and what didn't will help you to stop from wasting time in the future if a similar problem occurs. Remember that there are a lot of resources available to homeowners when it comes to dealing with nuisance wildlife. You can contact the Fish and Wildlife Commission's hotline for information regarding what can be done with nuisance wildlife. You can find nuisance wildlife information online, permits, rules, and regulations, as well as wildlife rehabbers and trappers at myfwc.com, or you can contact the Southwest Regional Office, which services Hernando and Citrus counties, at 863-648-3200. Remember that certain animals are considered protected and are regulated by law. The taking of nuisance alligators, deer, bears, bats, bobcats, most migratory birds, their nests or eggs, turkeys, bobwhite quail, or state-listed or federally listed species of special concern, threatened, or endangered species is prohibited or may require additional permits. You can learn more about the rules regarding wild animals online. Most regulations for wildlife are found in Chapter 68A of the Florida Administrative Code. An FWC permit is required for the take of any state-listed species. Protected fish and wildlife include those species listed as endangered, threatened, or species of special concern. FWC rules prohibit activities that may have a negative effect on protected fish and wildlife without a permit. Thank you for listening.